So our next speaker coming up is Theresa Wilbanks. Hi, Theresa.
Hi, Linda.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. And that session was amazing. I can't wait to rewatch it, and probably will watch it a few times.
Yeah, it's so fabulous to see you.
It's so good to see
You were like our #1 presenter at the last conference. You got like the most nice compliments from everybody.
Oh, Linda, no pressure.
I'm sure you will deliver once again. Hey,
oh my gosh,
I had all my pressure for the day this morning when I had those technical problems. So
yeah.
I think it's just my magnetic personality does not work well with electronics.
That's definitely it. Oh gosh.
All right, my friend, well, take it away.
Okay, well, I'm going to share screen.
Okay.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Let me ask the producer. He said he's getting it. Got it?
Okay, now I can share. Yep, that looks good.
There we go.
All righty. Yeah, thank you so much, Linda. And thank you everyone for being here. And I really enjoyed yesterday's sessions. I love the themes that we're hearing. And so we're going to continue with some of those today in this session. And for those of you who attended or watched the Navigating the Caregiver River session from the last Connecting Caregivers conference, you may recognize the beginning of this presentation, but we're going to discuss 4 new strategies today. So life is like a river. Sometimes it sweeps you gently along, and sometimes the rapids come out of nowhere. This is a great metaphor for life, and it really resonates with the experience of caregiving as well. So as Linda said, I'm Theresa Wilbanks, and I cared for my dad for 7 years. He passed in December 2020 at the age of 99. And I come from a family of caregivers. At 17, I gave up my bedroom for my mom's mom when she moved in with us. And my folks cared for my dad's mom in their home until she was 101. And then she moved into a care facility when care became too physically demanding and challenging. And she passed at 104. And, you know, I still, when I was caring for dad, I just didn't expect, you know, I didn't know what I was in for. I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. And I became burned out, and I knew that I wasn't on a sustainable path. And I was concerned about the effects of stress on my health. And I was worried that I would have significant regret about my relationship with dad, a relationship that was rapidly deteriorating in front of my eyes. And I wanted to understand, you know, why was this role so challenging? And did the caregiver gene skip me? And as I delved into the whys, it just became clear that it was hard. And my folks, they shielded that from me. And that is until I read my dad's journals, but that's another story for another day. But the need to understand why I was struggling led to lots of trial and error and tears. And at the end, a series of strategies that helped minimize the stress and ultimately improved my emotional and physical health. So the path that I was on to a more sustainable experience led to a more meaningful journey.
Yeah.
And I think someone's not on mute.
Pretty much just the cold-like symptoms, cough, congestion.
Can everyone check?
A little tickly
Okay.
throat.
Looks like Melissa may not be on mute. So I looked back at the first few years of caregiving, and I knew that I didn't have to be so hard. And I really wanted to help other family caregivers. So, you know, I became a certified caregiving consultant. I founded Sustainable Caregiving. And this is how I met Linda. And full confession, I was her stalker. I was given her book, Connecting Caregivers, by our home care company. And I highlighted sections and dog-eared pages, and I began following her work. And I finally met her and Lynn, her radio show host, at a holiday get-together. And I confessed that I had been stalking her. And you know, Linda, I never shared this with you, but as I met folks, you know, and I was sharing what I wanted to do, they each asked me, well, have you met Linda Burhans yet? So this is part of why I became your stalker and started following your work. And I found Linda as a caregiver who needed help.
Older and more
And
frail
I was
than
also on a path to help caregivers. So she became an inspiration as someone who cares for caregivers
right before
and
Melissa.
couldn't have been more generous and still generous with her support. So, conferences like this, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to continue to learn and to share with some of you, what I have done to create a more sustainable path for me.
Just especially the way this happened, it was like we've been so
I'm not
careful.
sure, Linda, if the tech folks can help us.
And
I'm hearing some other voices.
it may not have come from that. It may have come from something else, but we were careful.
Okay, I'll just continue.
If it were only this, and this.
So, we don't know how long we're going to be in the caregiver role, which is one of the challenges. And sustainability is about incorporating the strategies that help us care for ourselves as long as we need to while we're caring for a family member. And these strategies, they help me flip the script from I have to be a caregiver to I get to be a caregiver. And with the strategies, in addition to my health improving, the relationship between Dad and I improved significantly. And this photo is of my husband, Dad, and I celebrating Dad's 98th birthday. So imagine your caregiving journey is like being in a raft on a river. And the river has calm sections and obstacles, rapids, and a few waterfalls. And at times we feel like we've been tossed out of the raft and are drowning. Storms pop up and the emotions swirl. The trifecta is guilt, anger, and resentment. The stress and overwhelm, it can just be all consuming. Too much stress has a negative impact on our ability to think. We don't make our best decisions. And too much stress affects our health, our well-being, and our relationships suffer. So when we employ certain strategies to protect our well-being, manage the emotions and the stress, the river doesn't change, but how we navigate the river changes. We step into the flow. So our caregiving experience will likely intensify as time goes on, and the strategies that work today may not work tomorrow. Likewise, the strategies that aren't a good fit today may be a big help next month. So be sure to set aside rather than discard the strategies that don't fit your current situation, because the current in the caregiver river will keep changing. So these strategies fit together like a unique puzzle, unique for you and your experience. The strategies also support each other. At first, it may seem like you're building a Jenga tower that continues to tumble. And when you get the strategies dialed in, you have a stable tower, a sustainable caregiving foundation. Or back to our caregiver river, you might consider it your well-stocked life raft. So the 12 strategies are divided into 3 categories. And during the last conference, we talked about the strategies to prevent burnout or recover from burnout. And we discussed setting boundaries and self-care, cultivating compassion and mindfulness. I'll share the link to that session in the chat, and it's also available on Linda's YouTube. Let me do that now. Yeah, so you can check out Linda's YouTube for this, or here it is. Okay, and today we're going to talk about the strategies to reimagine control. Managing the emotions strategies include journaling and venting and forgiving and planning. And more about those strategies can be found at sustainablecaregiving.com. So reimagining control. What is control? Well, the power to influence or direct people's behavior or the course of events. It really helped me to see this in writing, to see the futility of trying to have control over my caregiving situation. I've shared with Linda before that I was under the illusion that I didn't want to control anyone else. I just wanted control over myself and my situation. But upon closer examination, I realized that my version of control would require having control over Dad's decisions and the processes surrounding his care, and that just wasn't realistic. So the strategies to reimagine control As a caregiver, you might feel like you have little control over your situation. This is why it's important. You might be trying to paddle against the current, and the resistance is tiring. That's how I felt. And when we step into the flow and go with the current, we navigate the obstacles with more momentum and agility. Stepping into the flow is like saying okay to whatever comes your way, and even turning the challenges into advantages. When we reimagine control, we reduce our stress because we're no longer battling for control, we have it. And the strategies to reimagine control are embrace the role, accept help, accept alternatives, and embrace and transform obstacles. You know, what does it look like to embrace the role? In part, it's acknowledging the wildness, accepting that there will be rapids and obstacles and waterfalls, unexpected turns, and hopefully a few calm sections. And it's vital to embrace our journey because resistance causes stress. The reality is that resistance to either the caregiving role or caregiving responsibilities, it wears down our resilience and our ability to cope and meet adversity with our best self. And simply put, less resistance leads to less stress. And while it's empowering to know that we're on the right path and exactly where we're supposed to be, how do we get to that place of acceptance and certainty? You know, we may not even resist or realize that we're resisting the role, but our body, the tension in our body doesn't lie. And most of us didn't plan on being in a caregiving role. It wasn't on my bucket list. And you might be understandably confused by your circumstances and wonder, how did I get here? And why did I get here? And what do I do now? And what about my plans and my goals and my dreams? Or caring for a spouse or a partner? What about our plans and dreams?
Yeah, who am I?
Yeah, exactly. We kind of lose connection to ourselves, and it doesn't seem fair. And we believe our circumstances are unjust, and acceptance can feel like giving into the unfairness. And to your point, Linda, you know, even scarier, our identity, you know, can get confused. Who am I if I'm no longer connected to the things that gave me purpose and joy?
Right.
Yeah, and our future, it feels uncertain now. You know, all of our plans have changed, and we can feel hopeless, and we wonder, how long will this be my life?
Right.
And the question inspires fear, and it could be many years. And acceptance requires letting go of our expectation that we're entitled to live life on our terms. And the question of how long can cause us to feel shame. You know, it's often disguised as guilt, but my freedom requires that my family member will no longer be here. Or shame because we can't embrace the role, and so we feel the sting of one more failure. And that feeling that we're no longer in control of our life and of our future is distressing. And layered into those worries are the worries about our family member. So there are many understandable reasons why we resist the role and the heavy responsibility, and may resent the idea that our life's journey has been derailed. And, you know, we can be doing a fantastic job caring for our family member and still be struggling with these emotions.
You know, somebody just said in the chat, when there is suffering, changes, and losses, fear is a word we may have to rethink.
Care is a word?
No, fair.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that is fair. Yeah, fair is a word we have to rethink. Absolutely. And rethinking that word is part of what gives us that control back, or, you know, reimagining what fair looks like, and yeah, connecting to that and our feelings and why we feel that things aren't fair. Absolutely. That's great insight. Yeah, and the benefits of acceptance when we can do that. Opportunity to grow. We're unburdened from regrets and resentment. And just a brief note about resentment. So resentment means to feel again. And resentment is replaying or reliving something that made us angry. So something made you angry and you felt it was unfair and it needed to change. But over time, it didn't change. So the anger turns hard. So anger is something that's going on. It's unfair and it needs to change. Resentment is nothing's going to change and it's affecting my mental health. And resentment, it's an addictive state of mind and it only gives us the illusion of control. And it's toxic and it hurts ourselves. So resentment saps our energy and it clouds our perceptions and our perspective. Recognizing this is the first step in forgiving and letting go. And if forgiveness doesn't come easily, practice the smaller acts of forgiveness and build up to the bigger acts. And this is really important for our well-being. It's one of the strategies, actually, of forgiveness. More benefits of acceptance. We begin to find gratitude in the experience, and our new perspective allows us to turn obstacles into opportunities. And this may resonate on some level, but how we achieve this radical acceptance does take work. And the next few strategies will help illuminate the path, and then we'll circle back to this. In the meantime, begin the work, a bit of homework. So later today or tomorrow, take a few minutes to imagine that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And when you have that image in your mind, how does the perception of your journey change? You could journal about Eckhart Tolle's concept that we are aligned with the energy in the universe only when we are in one of three modalities: acceptance, enjoyment, or enthusiasm. And he says that without this alignment, we're creating suffering for ourselves and others. And you could journal about how this relates to you in your caregiving role. And I connected with this quote because I was far from acceptance, enjoyment, or enthusiasm. And with some reflection, I could see how I was creating suffering for myself and others. And the next time you're aware of the feelings of resistance to your circumstances, sit with the feelings. Notice the source of resistance and explore the reasons behind the resistance. Maybe again, journal your thoughts. Exploring your feelings, it pulls the curtain back, like revealing the wizard in the Wizard of Oz. It can help you shift the feelings that are rooted in fear. So the next strategy to help us reimagine and reclaim control is accept help. So Becky and Linda discussed this topic yesterday and shared a lot of really great information. And one point I'd like to reiterate is that when the waters are calm, we may feel in control and wonder, what were we worried about? We've got this. And then we hit the rapids again, or a boulder appears out of nowhere and we're upside down. We can feel like we're drowning, and accepting help is like grabbing that life preserver. But this is one reason why we want to find the resources and the help we need before we're drowning, so that we're not trying to search when we're underwater. Accepting help is important because we can't do it all ourselves without consequences. And doing it all ourselves will just lead to burnout, and it's easier to prevent rather than recover from burnout. And when we accept help, we gain time for ourselves so that we can focus on our well-being. Another benefit that was mentioned yesterday as well is our family member can interact and engage with a variety of people, and that's a gift to them. And it's a gift to the person who's helping our family member. Linda really made that great point yesterday, that when somebody helps our family member, they feel good, and it's a gift to them. So someone asked me recently, why is it that we have such a hard time accepting help? And the list is long. And we heard a few things from Kate yesterday, and then from Becky and Linda. But when we recognize why we're hesitating and resisting, we can overcome some of that resistance. So first, accepting that we need help can be difficult. We might think, I don't need help. I can handle it if I just give up one more unnecessary activity. Yeah, before we know it, we've given up the things that help us feel whole, and we've dug a hole and we planted ourselves firmly in the middle. You know, the thoughts that cause us to resist can be, I'm the only one who can accomplish these tasks, or the chores aren't that difficult, I shouldn't need help, What will people think? I've heard that one recently, and I understand. Yeah. I'll spend more time managing the jobs than if I just did them myself.
Yeah.
And, by the time I find someone to help, I could have just done everything. So these are
Because
all
nobody can do it like me, Teresa. Nobody can do it
exactly.
like
And
me. This is my
yes,
responsibility.
100%. And, while that might be true, if it gets done, and that's part of letting go, letting go of some of that control over how things are done, and kind of looking at, if we can, if it's done and we're able to get that time to spend on ourselves, that's the objective, and that's what's important. And we do resist help because it can feel like we're giving up control. It's easier to do it ourselves. It feels that way anyway. Or we finally accept that we need help, and our care recipient resists outside help. And if this is the case, try to share with them that while you may not need help, I do need help, and I need help helping you. So this can help them move into a space of acceptance. And if their resistance persists, it's often overcome when the right match is found. And think of it as match.com for the three of you, because you'll also be interacting with the folks who are helping your family member. But if your family member likes to chat, a chatty aid will be welcome, versus if they prefer quiet. And what hobbies did your family member enjoy? Finding an aide who shares their interests can be a game changer. And would they prefer a male or a female aide? So when we found our successful match, Dad started asking when they would be coming next. And he seemed to prefer spending time with them. And I almost got jealous. And Dad came from a place of complete resistance. In the beginning, he refused to have folks come in and help him. And when I said I'd like them to come and help me, he agreed to that. But then he would say to them, uncharacteristically rude, I don't know why you're here. I don't need help. So it was a process, but when we find them at the right match, it just transformed everything. And he was looking forward to them coming. And then our caregivers going forward, he would develop great relationships with them. So that's what it took.
Teresa, there's a comment in the chat and about how difficult, of course, caregiving is, and said maybe the person who you're caring for needs to think about themselves too and how they're acting, and maybe they need to journal a little bit and find their role in this partnership.
Yeah, the person you're caring for. What I would say is, it goes back to that, definition of control. It's very challenging for us to have control over others' beliefs and their feelings. And we'll talk a little bit more about why our family members might resist having outside help come in, might resist our, desire to help them stay safe. I mean, there's a lot going on there. And I just think that while that would be nice, I think it's often not the case, that we really just have control over ourselves and how we respond and react to these things. So yes, it's just, more often than not, I find that the care recipients, for lots of reasons, they're experiencing their own fear and loss. Yeah. They may not be able to make that shift, but there's a lot that we can do that'll help us and in turn help them and help our relationship with them.
Right.
So if at the end we still, we want to come back to this, we absolutely can.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've all received help that wasn't helpful. So what help would be helpful? And what tasks could be delegated? I love Becky mentioned so many of them yesterday, and who has talents that can be matched to the tasks. And like Linda said yesterday, an out-of-state family member can make phone calls. It doesn't have to be just folks who are right there in your immediate, physical circle, but who can join your care team. And you might start with the family and friends, those who may have abandoned ship and taken the life rafts with them. That does happen. And when we start caring for a family member for all kinds of reasons, we can start to feel isolated and alone. But you might reconnect with some of those folks, and you might give them a few options to choose from. It's important to be real specific in your requests for help, though, so that you do get the help that you need. And go into it with the idea that you're collecting no's. It's okay if people can't help, move on to the next person, feel and release the frustration. Not everyone has the emotional abilities to be a part of your crew. The more time you spend angry is the more time you take away from you and yourself and your needs.
But I think some
So
people are just waiting for you to ask and they just want to help you.
yes, and helping them either, give them a few options. I recommend that caregivers carry a list of things that they could use help with, so that when somebody asks them, what they can do for them, because it is a challenge when you're so overwhelmed with everything that's going on, to try to come up with something this person can do to help you. But if as a caregiver, if you carry a list with you and then somebody says they'd like to help and you can show them these options, it takes a lot of the burden off of you. So it's true. And asking somebody for something specific, they may be concerned about saying, how can I help? Because they see all that you're going through and they can't imagine, how they could help, but they can. There are things they can do. And if not, again, you'll find your new circle. Because when we started caring for Dad, all of a sudden there are all these new folks in our world. And a lot of his friends did step away. And, our friends weren't necessarily able to help, but we did find new helpers. You might also check the community and see who could provide direct care or just sit with your family member. Contact the local area agency on aging for information and resources. I want to put that link in the chat as well. I know that Becky talked about it yesterday, and so you can find your local area agency on aging, and the agencies are different all across the country, and the amount of resources they have that are able to offer are different, but you can see what's available there. And then a home care agency like Assisting Hands is a great option. And then beyond that, what services are available that could reduce the time that you spend on other tasks, like grocery delivery, alternative transportation options, a pharmacy that pre-packs and delivers medications, Amazon Subscribe and Save. These are all things that we use to try to take some of those tasks, off the table. So short and long-term respite resources. Respite is a break from the responsibilities and the worries. And day centers were mentioned yesterday. That's a place for your family member to spend a few hours a week interacting, engaged in activities. There's often a meal, and they get a chance to interact with different folks while you get a break. But finding the right day center match is key. And then back to, could a family, friend, or neighbor just come over and spend time while you get away? And when you need to get away for more than a few hours, there are respite options offered by skilled nursing and assisted living facilities. But it's really important to start that research for short-term respite care before the need arises. And, when you can, if possible, take a weekend or a week to regroup every so often. And I know that's not easy. So more homework. Begin to think about what can be delegated, and journal about how you'll spend your time, the time that you gain when you have help, and how you'll focus on your well-being. We talked at the last conference about microdosing self-care. And self-care looks very different while caring for a family member. And often it requires reimagining the activities that renew our energy, into 5 and 10-minute blocks. So when you're journaling or imagining ways to prioritize your well-being, it may be that you're re-energized by getting a change of scenery and spending time in nature. Or it could be to read that next chapter in your book. It could be to call and connect with a friend. Could be that you go to that wellness visit that you've had to, postpone due to competing priorities. How often have we made sure that our family member gets to all of their doctor's appointments and we miss ours? So accepting outside help gives us the opportunity to prioritize our well-being alongside the well-being of our family member. And then start the process. Who or what service can take over one of your tasks and delegate, and then spend the time on you. So the next strategy to help us reimagine control is to focus on the destination so that we're steering in the right direction. And when we look ahead and focus on the destination, we can align our actions with our values. This often means accepting alternative paths. It will keep us paddling together in the same direction. And reading the water is a skill that we can develop. In a river, when the water begins to get choppy, we might soon be navigating rough water. And, caring for our family member, repeated falls can be a signal that we need to adjust the home environment, possibly adjust medications, or prepare for a more serious incident. And when we see a bend in the river, the quickest and smoothest way through is to follow the current and go with the flow. But we may hesitate to follow that path or not even see it due to fear. So with awareness, we might find that fear or our ego is at the root of the resistance at causing us to step out of the flow and ultimately causing stress. And this image of two puppies playing tug of war just represents what can sometimes feel like the interaction between us and our care receiver. And back to that one comment, I know with Dad and I just couldn't believe the conflicts that we would get into when I felt like we always were on the same page. So why it's important to accept alternatives and go with the flow is because when we calculate the cost of winning versus the cost of losing in the big picture, we begin to see when winning is losing. We may be convinced that we're right, and we may be right, but does it matter? If being right causes a conflict that results in one more chip in the relationship. The reality is that the tighter we hold on to control and we'll hold on to outcomes, the more control we relinquish. And that for me was just realizing that the tighter I held on to control and outcomes, I was completely giving up control. So reading the water in our caregiving experience can help us understand when going with the flow and choosing to accept compromise and alternative solutions can help us navigate more skillfully, like through those rough patches, the caregiving transitions, and in doing so, align our actions with our values. So we can follow the least resistant path of that swift water towards a destination rather than resisting and possibly paddling upstream, which just wears us out. It's understandable though. We resist because we care. And in the heat of the moment, it may not feel like resistance. We may not recognize the significance of insisting in our way of proceeding. And we can be confounded by what appears to be a lack of logic when our family member insists on getting on a 6-foot ladder to Velcro a painting to the ceiling. And that happened. And I'm not saying we should let it happen twice, but look at the motivation. And if you look at the motivation behind the behavior, rather than making a big deal about it, resolving the safety concern in a way that allows your, in this case, dad, to maintain his dignity, a what were you thinking approach. And yes, you absolutely have the right to those thoughts and that reaction. But is it really going to serve you at the end of the day to react strongly? These are questions I asked myself because awareness helped me identify that it was fear that was driving my response. And when my reaction was met with resistance, my ego joined the conversation. So now fear, ego, and anger are bedfellows. And when fear and ego join the conversation, the choice of words, my choice of words and specifically verbs was not always contributing to a productive conversation. And we'll talk more about this in a minute, about verbs. So how do we let go? When we acknowledge that we're all on a journey to a common destination, end of life, and we're helping our family member who's further along on that journey, we can use this perspective to determine our overall objectives so that we keep the big picture in mind. And with the big picture in mind, we can assess our actions, our interactions, and ask, does this lead to our overall objectives? And our new role, which is not a parenting role, it requires new perspective. And, it includes understanding when winning is losing. So I was happy when dignity came up twice yesterday in a couple of presentations, and I want to introduce the concept of dignity of risk. It's a concept that everyone's entitled to make choices that involve risk. And while I would do what I could to make sure a 6-foot ladder was no longer accessible, I would also help Dad try to reach his goal of jumping out of a plane for his 94th birthday, even if it went against all of my protective instincts. Our family members' motives are inspired by dignity and independence and a desire for control. And this is in contrast to our motives inspired by protection and fear for their safety. Empathy helps us recognize the many losses our family member has already experienced. And these losses include not only people, but abilities and passions. And if we can replace resistance with curiosity, we can begin to uncover what drives the desires. And since we can't be angry and curious at the same time, fear and ego are removed from the conversation. We can begin to choose our words and our verbs more carefully. Verbs that give control back to our family member can help us reach agreement. Verbs such as manage, control, and choose can be triggering. And, caregiving is a trigger minefield for both directions. So these words can be triggering when used in the wrong way and empowering when used in a way that shows you understand and empathize with your family member. So let your loved one know that they're still in control, managing their affairs, making choices that direct their life. You may be there guiding the efforts, but it's their right and need to be in control. And I'll just give you an example of one way, and I made all of the mistakes and said all of the things that weren't helpful. So how not to say it: Dad, your pill box is a mess. Some daily pills are missing and others are added twice. It's time for me to take over your medicines. So that wasn't helpful. How to say it: Dad, I understand that mistakes are going to happen. How can I help you continue to manage your medications? Think about it and let me know what ideas you have. The response that creates space between the discovery that your family member has mistaking medicines or mismanaged medication and your reaction, that space, allows them to maintain dignity, allows them the opportunity to be involved in the solution. The goal is that when you revisit the subject and listen to the suggestions, you'll be seen as a collaborator rather than someone trying to take control. And you may agree to one of your care recipient suggestions or have a few ideas of your own to offer. David Soley's book, How to Say It to Seniors, offers so much guidance on this topic and more. And I'll put a link to that book in the chat because this changed everything about how I started communicating with Dad. And we could discuss another concept, illusion of independence, at length, and there's certainly pros and cons, but helping your loved one maintain control will help them complete their journey with dignity and can help you reframe what control looks like for you. So think about your big picture objectives. And when you journal the ways you might be wrestling for control, you can begin to consider if these actions are in line with your overall objectives. And then in the next conflict, be curious. And keep those verbs written on a cheat sheet nearby or on your hand like you did when you were a kid and needed to record that phone number, because those verbs can make all the difference. And next, we'll talk about obstacles. So when an obstacle obstructs the flow, become the flow. That sounds very zen, very peaceful. And it can be equally graceful and aggressive and assertive when you think about the raging river that carves a path through the valley over centuries, wearing away rock. And then it becomes a gentle stream, still winding its way around obstacles as it shapes them. And why is it important to talk about caregiving obstacles? Well, one reason is that obstacles are everywhere. We encounter obstacles within the systems. Our friends and family can present obstacles. Our care recipient can feel like an obstacle. And what if we could transform these obstacles to work to our advantage? Overcoming obstacles is empowering, and transforming them is next level. We resist leaning into obstacles because obstacles make us emotional. Like, what emotions come up when you think about a recent obstacle you encountered? Frustration, anger, fear. And when you think of that obstacle, you feel the reaction in your body. Maybe you're holding your breath. Does your brain shut down just when you need it most? I can remember when Dad and I were at the VA center about an hour from his home, and I handed them the 20 pages of paperwork that I had put together, and they rejected it. And I couldn't hold back the tears. And there was a waiting room full of people, and I was trying to hide the tears from Dad because I didn't want him to see that I was upset. And there were tissue boxes on all the counters, and I saw a man at the counter break down and reach for a tissue. And the VA helps a lot of folks, but it can also be an obstacle-rich environment. And emotion clouds our view of the obstacle. Emotions magnify the obstacle's power, and in doing so, can minimize our power. You know, if you can remember a time when you were pressured to make a decision and you were completely overwhelmed, we aren't able to think clearly, and we may feel paralyzed even. When this happens over and over, we lose our resilience and we lose our ability to respond rather than react. And we lose the strength that helps us step back and then take the extra steps needed to figure out how to overcome this obstacle and how to find the shiny gift within. So accepting and leaning into our reality can help us flip the obstacle so that it works for us rather than against us. And when we ask ourselves, how might I use this situation to work to my advantage? We begin to examine the obstacle with a different lens. You know, under the microscope, we can study the obstacle from all different angles until we see the gift that obscures the obstacle, you know, is obscuring a gift and it's hiding in plain sight. And the microscope, just really looking closely at that obstacle and trying to figure out what that gift is and where it is and where it's hiding can help us find it. Changing our perspective is how we take back our power and take the steps that help us reach the next level. And that's what the image is in the corner of this screen. It's a change in perspective. And if we go back to the first strategy we discussed, accepting the role. So what is the obstacle? It may be what we had envisioned for our life has been derailed. So if we move from resistance to radical acceptance and flip the script from I have to be a caregiver to I get to be a caregiver, we can start to uncover the possible gifts that the obstacle, or in this case, our resistance to the role, was concealing. And when I tried to move from not just accepting, but embracing that this was where I was supposed to be, I struggled with, if this is where I was supposed to be, then why is it so hard? And that led to the question, or why was I making it so hard? And then what was I supposed to be learning? Which led to these strategies and reinforced the desire to help others. And it was still hard. But the shift in perspective helped me find the purpose, which led to the gifts. In the VA example, I wasn't able to overcome the obstacle that day, but when I took a step back and decided to put the obstacle under a microscope, I reached out to learn more. And by doing this, I found a few helpers. And while systems are often broken and present obstacles, there are often angels within the systems. And Ryan Holiday, he's the author of The Obstacle is the Way. And one of my inspirations says, look for angles, not angels. Well, by looking for angles, I found angels, and they were the gift that helped transform the obstacle and allow me to become empowered by it. And so grateful for those folks at the VA. So to get started with this strategy, reflect on how obstacles make you feel. And it can help to get in touch with that feeling so that when it happens, you recognize it. And then later journal about a current obstacle. And after you describe it and how it makes you feel, you know, begin to explore it from all angles. And what could be the benefit if you were to climb to the top and plant your flag and dominate that obstacle so that it now works for you? And when you get a glimpse of this opportunity, the path forward will begin to unfold and you'll see the next step. The act of journaling gives you the moments of stillness that you need to settle the emotions so that your heart and mind can connect. The answers are there, and when the fog lifts, you'll be able to see them. and then just take one step. And the step may be a step back, or it may be to ask a question that will lead you closer to the gifts that will empower you. Now, okay, so let's take a quick look at the slippery slope from carefree to caregiver and full of cares, and how these 4 strategies fit together to help us reframe control. So we've talked about just 4 of the strategies today. And, as we said, there are more. And when you work out how the strategies fit together for you and your situation, then you begin to develop a stable, solid, yet fluid ecosystem, because the river is ever changing. And your support system and your strategies must also be fluid and flexible, to evolve with your ever-changing needs. So one more quick video. And this is, imagine all of your strategies in your toolkit working to support you and your unique experience. And your support system becomes stable when the strategies fit you, your situation, and they fit together. So that was a brief look at a few of the sustainable caregiving strategies and how they fit together to create a sustainable caregiving experience. And before we finish, I would like to just touch base briefly on one of the strategies that weaves its way through all of them and sort of supercharges them. So mindfulness focuses our attention on the present moment. And, practicing mindfulness helps us cultivate awareness. And when we're in the present, stress associated with ruminating on the past or worry about the future is minimized, if not eliminated, allowing us to be more aware of what's happening in real time, both internally and externally. And it's this heightened awareness that will help us get in touch with our resistance to the role, or resistance to accepting help, or resistance to going with the flow. And awareness will help us identify, what is making us uncomfortable so that we can lean into it. Awareness also helps us notice the tension in our body so we can uncover the root cause. Maybe do breathing exercises and relax, or helping us face the obstacles and recognize when fear is driving our actions and reactions. So mindfulness is one of the core strategies that I just wanted to mention. And I really appreciate this time with you. And if you'd like to learn more about these and other strategies, you can go to sustainablecaregiving.com and sign up for the free 12 Sustainable Caregiving Strategies PDF ebook. And I can put that link in the chat as well. And then my book, Navigating the Caregiver River, A Journey to Sustainable Caregiving, is available on Amazon. It's a recently written book, and I'll put that link in the chat also. So Linda, I think I saw some comments. I'd be happy to address and answer any questions if we have a little bit of time.
Yes, we have some time, but I had somebody text me, and because some people are listening like in their cars, and she said, the hardest part in taking care of my dad is he's so angry. Do you have any suggestions on how to quell his anger?
Yeah, and anger, and we talked a little bit about loss. I'm going to stop sharing. Yeah, we talked about loss. Oh, I think finding out where the anger is coming from, and it could be connected to the losses that have been experienced or had. I think if you look at, we're caring for our family member, and they're possibly in the worst place they've ever been in their lives, and we are also possibly at the worst place we've ever been in our life, because we can feel so hopeless and helpless. And then that does create sometimes a perfect storm. So getting to the root of that anger can be really helpful. And it may take, I don't know if he'd be willing to talk to somebody about that. The area agency on aging might be able to, they have social workers. That's one option. I think finding out what's going on there, it may be that another family member, he'd be more open to talking to them. Yeah. Sometimes as the caregiver, we're not the person they want to open up to.
I just thought of a story of years ago, and this woman was taking care of her dad, and he was kind of angry. And she started coming to some support groups and doing some different things. And her sister came to visit her. And her sister said, "You look wonderful. What have you been doing?" And she says, "Well, I found some support groups and some resources." And her sister was great. And she said, "And I found this journaling workshop where I can get out my feelings." And her dad goes, "Good for you." And sister said, "I'm just trying to have a nice conversation with her. If you're going to be so negative, Dad, you need to go in the other room." And Dad went in the other room, but he kept listening. And she said, "Yeah, I can really get my feelings out, and it's in a non-judgmental, place." And all of a sudden, Dad yelled from the other room, "I wish somebody else could get their feelings out." And the two sisters went in and they said, "Dad, we're here to help you. We want to do anything we can to help you." And the dad used to write years ago. They said, "Maybe you would like to journal?" "Maybe," he said. And they gave him a black and white notebook. And a little while later, they saw him write down a little bit. A little while later, the next day, they saw him. And after like 3 days, he took the book and he said, Here, you want to see how I feel?" And they opened it up. And he said, "I'm tired of being a burden to my family. I'm tired of taking so many medications. I'm tired that I can't go outside." And the sister's like, "Dad, you're not a burden to us. You took care of us our whole lives. You know what, Dad? Maybe when I go for my walk, maybe you want to come with me." Well, 2 months later, she says to me, "Can I bring my dad to the journaling workshop?" I'm like, "Heck yeah." His name was Joe. He brought me from Brooklyn. He brought me the best meatballs I ever had in my life. And he came in. And he said, "You want to hear my journal now?" And he opened it up and he said, "I'm grateful that I have a family that cares for me. I'm grateful." I want to cry. "I'm grateful when my daughter goes for her walk, I can do it." So when I hadn't thought about that story in a long time, and when that girl just sent that text, like, try it. Try Definitely. It because he's got to get his stuff out too.
Yeah, what a transformation. And you're so right, Linda. Like, as caregivers, we feel like we're not seen and heard, and our family members are often feeling that way as well. And he needed, yeah, he just, and the things that help us, like journaling, that's fantastic that that worked for him.
Well,
Definitely
even,
try
you
that.
know, even him saying, I'm tired of being a burden to my family, and for the sister to say, Dad, no, you're not a burden. We want to do this. You
Mm-hmm.
had 3 jobs when we were kids,
Yeah.
but we have to have those conversations.
We do. That's so important, having those conversations. And we've talked before, when we get help, we can actually sit down and have those relationships. And I know, Becky, and you talked about this yesterday, but be the father daughter, have those conversations and hear what your family member's feeling. And if we're just so busy taking care of them and we've stepped into this caregiver role, then we're no longer connecting. As
Yeah.
it's important to connect so that we want to be creating positive memories during this
Yes.
experience, during this time. And if we aren't able to reimagine control. I didn't get that. Could you try again? Oh, that was my watch. I'm so sorry. If we aren't able to reimagine control, then we're always battling for it. Our family members battling for it. And then we're not able to get to that place where we're, just.
Right. Yeah, just we need to have the conversation because it's tough. Yeah, I can't imagine what it must feel for a dad, for his daughter having to take care of him.
Yeah.
That's, man, that's a really tough situation.
It is tough.
And another thing I find with caregivers is, well, mom or dad's hardly talking to me. Well, do you sit down and talk to them? Or are you running around the house while you're talking to them? You're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing this, you're doing that. I said, please sit down with them, look eye to eye, hold his hand. You're going to get a much better chance of having a conversation that way than you're flitting around because we feel we have to do so much stuff.
Yep. We had a 3:00 standing date, and he would have his gin and I'd have my water, and we would sit and talk. And the day before he passed, we did that. We didn't know that the next day he was going to be gone. We had that 3:00 little session, and part of that, and I mentioned journals, we would read his journals that he had written decades earlier, and I'd go through and read them, and he'd tell me the backstory. So that was special. And the only way we were able to do that is it had to make it happen, because it's not easy when you're just so busy prioritizing, their needs, their family members' needs. So
I'm trying to see what they're saying in the chat. Can you see?
Yeah. Let's see. Dennis talks about the dementia-friendly restaurants starting again, which is fantastic. And my mother always has been abusive, hasn't changed. Yeah, that's a different situation that's really challenging. And
and sometimes
these strategies don't necessarily, if somebody's been abusive or somebody's suffering from dementia, things do look a little bit different. When I'm talking about the control and dignity and all of that, I do recognize that things can be different if we have to be just very, very protective of our family member.
I remember a caregiver saying to me one time, my mother was a drunk. My mother hit me. My mother did this. She's the last person I want to take care of. So I always say, I hope you can forgive her. But even if you can or whatever, have someone else care for her. Maybe you're not the person to care for her. And that's okay. And that's
the first strategy is boundaries. And I think you're right. We have to recognize where we have to protect ourselves, our emotional well-being, our physical well-being, all of that. Yeah, you're right. It's okay. And that's what, caregivers need to hear that.
Yeah. And as I said yesterday, I want to repeat again, the card I have that on the back, it says the person I am with has Alzheimer's dementia, which makes it difficult for them to find the right words and understand what has been said. Thank you for your patience. This can make a world of difference in your caregiving. So there was a woman that used to come to my support group, and I give them out all the time. And one day she called me and she said, can I have 12 more? I said, sure. So I left them by my house. And she came to the next support group. She goes, those cards saved my life. I said, what do you mean? So my husband and I live in a mobile home park, and my husband's starting to wander in people's yards. And when he walks the dog, he's not always cleaning up the poo. And people are giving him dirty looks. So she went around, she gave one card to each neighbor. And they said, he can come in our yard. We'll clean up the poo. Maybe he would like some lemonade. So now she has a whole community there instead of looking at her husband and looking at her like there's an issue, that know what's going on and they just want to help.
That's awesome.
They just want to help.
That's
So once
awesome.
again, if anybody needs any of these, email me at lindaburhans@aol.com and I'll send you some.
That's
Jenny,
great.
see any last words? Everybody says brilliant and wonderful work as always,
Well,
Theresa. Thank
And
you.
I
Thank
see
you.
the
Thank
resentment, guilt. I just want all the caregivers out there to know that it's okay to feel those feelings, but also know that, you know, you're doing a fantastic job, and all that guilt, anger, resentment is normal. So my heart's with you all, and yeah. And
Yes.
yeah. All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I hope to see you in person soon,
Yes, I hope so too.
now that I'm becoming a world traveler.
Oh, I love that. Yes, we'll have to connect somewhere.
In fact, the end of May, I'm going to meet some caregivers from my Zoom support group in Seattle, Washington.
Oh, wonderful.
Isn't that
Oh,
cool?
fun.
Yeah, it's very
Yes.
exciting.
Oh,
'Cause I
so
talk about in my support groups, I want to travel. So they're like, so when are you coming here? I'm like, so throw out some dates.
Oh, you're going to get some invitations. That's awesome.
Well, in September, I'm also going on a trip to Peru with a group called Gutsy Women Travel.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I want to hear more about that. That's awesome.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend. God bless you and have a delicious day.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, next we have Dr. Delon Canterbury coming up.